It's funny, Nick's story about the sheep. The beautiful thing about Bible people getting together is all these lovely triggers. And I spent probably the first 15 years of my life every weekend, every summer at my grandfather's farm. 2 hours from Halifax, right, where I lived with my parents. And morning and night, ba, 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 ba. So Bob he does pave the way, right? And you don't even know. Up until I was 15, it was country life every weekend and city life all week. You know. So, thanks. I never even thought about that. But the sheep. Anyway, the book is there. It was a little bit difficult to put this together because a number of people have heard my talk in Myrtle Beach in 2013. It's on the website if you want to see it on Oceanic Publishing's website. So a week or so before I came here, I went to the writing shed just to, sometimes when I go down there, I'm not even there, really. Because I said, Bob, I think for the Myrtle Beach people that have already heard my talk about Slave of Love 5 years ago, I tried to bring up some new material. So you wouldn't, you may have forgotten that talk. But anyway. So I use cue cards only because I'm, you know, I have to be prompted. I prompt myself, I guess. But I want everybody to know that when I chat, please ask me a question. If you have a question about Baba or about William, more about William, anytime. Okay, don't. It's more. This is more conversation than me delivering a spiel. So just put your hand up and
Excuse me, Bob.
go for it.
I just want to ask, does everybody here know who Bob is and what he's done with this book that he's written?
If you just give us a quick.
I'd like that.
I can do. Can I do? Yeah.
Yeah.
Slave of Love was written, published in 2012. The kernel, or the nugget, this is called Nuggets of Joy, but I'm gonna, it's not all joyful, by the way, was probably born 15 years before that. But I was working for the Bogus News for my journalism life, and I never could come home from covering silly meetings and whatever I was doing and turn my thoughts to Baba. But I took journalism because I wanted some tools to be able to write Baba books after learning about Baba in 1967. So, but I had to wait all my working life to retire before. But I collected material on William for 15 years before I even started writing.
You say William Donkin? Is that
William Dr. Donkin, who was, I think everybody knows William Donkin, who was the only Westerner early Mandalay member who spent 30 years in India with Baba from 1939 until he died the year Baba died. Very young, roughly mid-50s. Maybe of a broken heart. He met Baba in 1933 in London. So 6 years before he went to India, he had to complete medical school. So that was. So as I said, don't be shy about asking me questions, because I don't have to get through everything. This can be continued, or it's not like a.
Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Sure.
It's a couple of important notes. He also wrote The Wayfarers.
William Donkin did.
William Donkin wrote The Wayfarers, which is all the accounts about his travels with the musts.
And the dust jacket of the Wayfarers got me going on William's story 15 years before that book was out, because grew up in a well-to-do family. This is William, not me. And crossed the Sahara as a 21-year-old with Norman Kern, who went on to bigger things even, with the Queen of Sheba book, and he explored all his life, Norman. He was his partner in that adventure. And then he found out about Baba shortly after that Sahara experience. He was not, his father, everybody told him not to do that because he was doing it the wrong time of the year. He was risking his life to go across the Sahara, but he was a mountain climber before that. So in his family, they were all mountain climbers. That was what people did instead of watching TV if they had the money. If they had the money to go to the Swiss Alps, that's what they did. So he was an adventurer. So the flap, as Nick said, the dust jacket on the Wayfarers, I read it and I said, I want to someday write about this guy. But I did wait 15 years, and as Nick said, the inspiration from the Mandalay, I waited 28 years to go to India, and when I walked in Mandalay Hall, I heard Mani's voice before I even met her. Where is this 28-year person? What took you so long? Well then, you know, the build-up to get there was a family, career, job, you know, a wife that was not into Baba, but she was more of a Baba person than I was, really, as far as giving goes. And late wife, my late wife. Anyway,
This one's not so good.
so anybody, I'll just,
Whoops, sorry.
Yeah.
I was supposed to take it.
Jane's still training me to say, that was your late wife. Anyway, she was a wonderful gal, and Jane knew her. The nuggets of joy, I don't know, like I said, I went to the writing shed last week and spent a few hours putting together a couple book talks. And this one is strictly on Slave of Love, the first book. The nuggets of joy, they really keep the writing process going if you're a writer, you know. And, I know David's done the Corset story and Judith, and he probably knows that there's lots of petals and there's lots of pebbles along the way, both, right? There's stones and there's blossoms, and you just keep going forward, and the blossoms you hope there'll be a few more of those than there are stones, I'll tell you. Anyway, we all need these nuggets of joy in our lives, for sure. And a couple of bright highlights during the process of writing Slave of Love came out of the blue from Baba. It was a very long wait before contact with William Donkin's surviving members evolved. And because of my journalism training, I needed the family. I couldn't write this William Donkin book without being in touch with his family, right? And that was one of the highlights, because in 2008, I was, 2008. I had put a little thing on Ancestry.com seeking any surviving relatives of Dr. William Donkin from Surrey, England. Twin sister Mary, that's all I knew. I didn't know. So I came back from the center and I was struggling with, I had a lot of material, but I did not have family connection. And I opened my laptop, I didn't take the computer with me, and there was an answer. That was 2 years it sat on Ancestry.com. And the answer was, I am the person you seek. That was the first sentence, and the second sentence, William was my favorite uncle, and my mother was his twin sister. I mean, you know, I wept. I wept. Baba gives us these things that keep us going. and Bridget Berry, who came to the center eventually with her husband to open Williams' watercolor show. She loves the center. Her and her husband came to see me in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia after the book came out, you know. And she said in her little Ancestry.com, and after saying, I'm the person you seek, what do you want to know about my uncle? Because they were all teenagers and there was 9 cousins, right? And when William came home occasionally, he prompted them to be rebellious with their parents, go necking behind the tree, go smoking behind the woodshed, whatever. And they loved him for that because their parents were very crusty English people, right? And their favorite uncle, when he came home, and he went home quite often in the 60s, right? And they were probably between 12 and 18. And they all, you know, they all loved him dearly. Anyway, Bridget was the youngest daughter of William's twin sister, and that was a pretty big family. I think there's 5 of them, including 2 twin girls, and Bridget has twin girl sisters. So to cut it short, that family connection was there then in 2008. 2010, I went to India and asked the archives, I know I don't want to put you in any trouble, but if there's any material on William Donkin, would you mind looking? So I didn't have to spend all of my 2 or 3 weeks there just looking to get it. And when I got there, Janet Judson and Jessica and Ben there was a pile like that waiting for me of all original material on a desk and in my own little corner in the archives. And I loved working there every day. I hardly went to the Samadhi. And I don't know, it's hard to explain. When I left India that time, I said, I'm never coming back here again. I had such a joyful time getting the Donkin material, but I did not go to the Samadhi enough because this was all original material. I knew I would not get back, so it was kind of tough. Anyway, 4 years later, after that 2010 visit, the book was, or 2 years later, it was published. And then in the spring of the following year, Bridget arrived in her 60-foot RV in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, coming from Missouri with her husband, just to say, I had to meet you in person. Because the nieces and nephews did not know about William's life in India. His parents did not even know. He was working for a hospital. They knew very little about Baba. Every time William went home, his father said, when are you coming home? When are you going to be a doctor in London? He was under tremendous pressure from his father. Why are you over there? And so when Slave of Love was published, they said, we never knew any of this about our uncle. We just thought he was attached to one hospital doing good works, right? The spiritual master part, he would not talk about him at home. I think he probably did with his mom and dad, and his father was, it was, if you've read Sobs and Shrubs, it was like Aga Ali and his father in Bombay, always dragging Ali out of the Prem Ashram all the time. Well, William's father did not like this spiritual connection to a guru.
Excuse me. Will you mention anything about at some point when Donkin died and the things were missing?
I will, as we move along. You might have to remind me, and this, I may not get through this because I do like questions, okay? Anyway, a year after Bridget and David came and visited me, she showed up at the center to open William's original watercolors were at the meeting place. And how thrilled am I that she'll come that distance. They stayed at the center 3 days. They loved it there. They want to come back again. But on that visit, I said to Bridget, I truly feel already, because of this, I said, I feel like a member of the Donkin family. And she looked at me and she said, you are. because of what you've done for us, right? Because now we know that side of our uncle, and which, she said, you are a member of the family, you always will be. So the nuggets of joy are like both books, and even the third book that's now being worked on. It's all of these family connections. It's not about selling books. It's the Donkins are now more exposed to Baba and more, there's at least 2 other nieces and nephews that want to come to the Baba Center. They'll eventually come, right? And I think this has helped that connection.
And I'm sorry that I don't know this, but, so your books, the first book was called
Slave of Love.
Slave of Love, and then
That's
there's another
right.
one, Nuggets of Joy?
No, Divine Drama, which came,
Charles Cribbin.
that's Charles Purdon, who wrote The God Man,
Okay.
and that's another talk. But, and I can go back and forth if there's, anyway, her response was beyond genuine when she said that, because she looked me right in the eye and she said, you are a member of our family, you fool, and that was worth the book, that was worth the book. The family connections from both books are way beyond selling books, as I said. And that was just a preamble. So I want to turn to William because that's what this is about. The end of the preface in Slave of Love reads in part, the reader will undoubtedly ask the why of William's life. Many times along the way in reading this book, and different readers will form different conclusions. I think Nick said earlier, this and this, this and this. If we're still using this, it's not a good deal. Most of the people here have been with Baba a long time. You got to get to this. You got to give this up, right? And William, I think that's what Baba does with everybody. You have to give up the mind, right? Anyway, Baba was very clear in his drive to bring his followers closer to divine love or God realization. And he firmly believed that the individual with our own selfish thoughts and desires should not exist. And again, I didn't know anything, I still don't know a lot about effacement, but I know that's what Baba wanted from all of his followers. He wanted Bob Mossman wiped out. He wanted Jane Brown Mossman wiped out. He wanted Tom wiped out. He wanted the oneness that comes with getting rid of that baggage, right? And the final goal was effacement. And as I have here with an exclamation mark, how easy is that? We spend our life and I never even knew what the word even approached, but I knew that was happening to William for 30 years in India. He was being effaced, and he was not finding it easy. It was a tough one. Because he graduated from Barracks, he was going to India to run Baba's new hospital. Never in the 30 years was it built. Never. And I do harbor this strong inkling that William, he was trying his very, he knew the game. He knew the game, but his ego was a graduate doctor who's going to run a new hospital for his spiritual master, who he's completely gaga in love with, Baba. And that was what his going there was to do that. And up until 2 years before Baba dropped the body, William was still fighting with Baba about this hospital that never happened. They would have fights, arguments, of course. And when Baba did drop the body, this may be part of the effacement because these things are in the book, if you've read it or may read it in the future. William was overwhelmed and distraught when Baba dropped his body. And some people say he died from a broken heart less than 6 months later, right? At the age of 56, 57. But his little note to Fred Winterfield in that interval between January 31st and William's own passing in August 9th, 1969, I'll just quote from it. I suppose soon Baba will compel all of us to go and tell the world about him. The letter to Fred was written 2 days before William died. 2 days. He did not want to come to America to talk about Baba. He lived it, and he just, I think at that point, he felt he had been to the mountaintop, and it was, he said, she said, reiterating Baba's stories. He wasn't looking forward to it, so it was like he was screaming, "Help me, Baba. My effacement has not been achieved. You're going to put me in front of people. To do that is like working for a living, right? You have to tell these stories, and William was not looking forward to it. Anyway, anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
Sure.
Did they diagnose his cause of his death?
William always had a heart problem right from childhood. He had, it might be an exaggeration, but at least a half a dozen operations before he was 10 because of his heart problem. Baba knew about the heart problem, but not very few other people did. So when William was on the New Life, at one point, William was near fainting, right? And Baba knew the heart problem. So you'll see in one of the books, some of the books, that he gave William an orange.
Yeah,
That was it.
I thought it was because of his sugar condition.
It was, well, it might have had something to do with his, he had health problems, William did. And he was prone to pass out, right? He was prone to nausea and passing out. But no one, I don't think, knew much about his health problems other than Baba, because he would, you know.
Can I just ask you, so was he given direction that he was supposed to go to America and talk about Baba?
It was expected, I think, during the last darshan, somebody would have said to him, even before that, Elizabeth or Kitty was very close to William.
I think the Luck brothers also videotaped
Yeah.
Donkin.
Oh, really? I did not even
Oh,
know
I
that.
believe Irwin has, still
Okay.
in the refrigerator.
Okay. But he was cringing at that prospect. He didn't want to do it. I mentioned the hospital. Even in the 60s, William was still at times frustrated that the hospital, Baba's carrot is the hospital. Baba had enticed William to India in 1939, but the hospital had never been built. During his many years with Baba, William's doctoring skills were very often not at the forefront. He was a bus driver, latrine cleaner, muss chaser, and most importantly for us, Baba's leading envoy to the West. You have no idea what William did with Mare Center. Whenever you're there, he was the front runner. He went there before Baba went there to make sure Baba's wishes were being carried out by Elizabeth on the center and Norina. He was the envoy. He would be there he would help design the roads. He was Baba's front runner to go to England before Baba went to England. After 1939, he was always, the records I've checked, they're all talking about Baba's trip, but I find all kinds of airline receipts. William's there 3 weeks before, be it England or be it America. He's always the Western, you know, without the Wayfarers, without Charles Purdon's books, without Gene Adriel's Avatar, without William Donkin being the front runner in the West, Baba would not have been as well known. We know that, you know. So.
In regard to his medical work, I remember vaguely reading about in Dehradun, he was given an office, and that he dressed in a suit.
Oh,
Would you tell
yes.
us a little about that?
It was almost like the mini hospital, you know. Now we're gonna give William, they'd just been through the new life. Now we're gonna set up William's dispensary, and we're going to, he's actually gonna have a clinic. And it's in the book. There was another competing doctor down the street, and the son of that competing doctor would come to William's office in a hypochondriac situation as often as he could to tie William up so he couldn't see his own patients.
Oh my God.
Because there was competition from this Western doctor in Dehradun. Now the other part was that William was not, he would treat anybody that needed treatment. Money was not, he was never being paid by these poor farmers. And Baba said, just keep looking after people. Never mind the money part, never mind the money part. But there's another story of a doctor. But what happened to William was, eventually, he said, this is costing so much, and the patients seem to be going away, you know, so they did eventually close very quickly, within a year after that opened. So William had his little shot at being the big shot doctor, which Baba didn't, he never wanted William to think he was even a doctor.
And yet, Baba was the one that made him finish.
Yes, he said, I have work for you. But he's building that ego way up, but William he never seemed to have an ego. Intellectually, he knew what Baba was doing, facing the ego, you know, destroying the ego, but it was still hard, you know. He was a Westerner. He was a Westerner, that's it.
But didn't he really help Baba after Baba's
He
accident?
did, with the consultation with the doctor in London. But you know, when Baba would be in pain, he would say, what are you doing to me? You're hurting me more than you're helping me. I mean, you know, in case William thought he was helping Baba, look out.
What kind of a doctor are you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. That's why he called Nilu and Donkin both barbers, which in India means butchers, right? And he would, to put it bluntly, crap on these doctors often. And the reminder of his doctoring skills, William Donkin, were not always called on, and Baba was chipping away at William's professional ego. In much the same way, he brought Go here to a shocking standstill when she graduated in medicine. Same thing. Baba basically said to Go here after she graduated from Bombay, came to help in Manda, asked her to be Baba's doctor. He took her aside one day. I think he did it alone. There might have been some witnesses, because I think Baba likes that, because that, as Malaria says, your nose is rubbed in even more than. But he said directly to Go here, what do you think you were, a big shot doctor? You were a Mandali member first and foremost. And that means you're a slave. You're a slave. Right? Which reminds me of...
And the job he gave her
Yeah.
to take care of the chickens.
Yeah.
That was her first job, was feeding and watering the chickens.
And the Slave of Love title, you know, I struggled with it. I don't know where it came from when I even thought of it, but I had the title for a while. It sounds like a B movie, right? Slave of Love. Anyway, maybe someday it will be. I hope it'll be an A movie. I said, did William really feel like a slave? I think he felt very fortunate. Whatever Baba was putting him through, like we all do, that's why we're still here, we feel fortunate. And the day in Mandalay Hall, these are the nuggets that happened, because I said, I don't want to insult William if he didn't feel like a slave. But that was one day, I don't know, Erich was telling the story, and somebody said, some Westerners said, you're all a bunch of servants for Mayor Baba. You're all just servants, and why do you do this? And Erich, the pregnant pause, which we all know from Erich, such beautiful pregnant pauses. He said, servants, we're not servants, we're bloody slaves. That's what he said. And it was so the title was blessed. And even since this book has come out, the real slave of love is Baba. Really, he's the real slave of love. If you watch the last movies, when he's washing the feet of the poor in the 60s, the mid 60s, he's trying to put his forehead on their feet after he's wiped their feet, and he may do it once, and then he can't get his head down to put his forehead on their feet. And he looks directly at the camera in one of those shots with the most saddest look on his face that he can't do it anymore. So he was really the slave, Baba's the slave of love. He really is. Any comments?
Oh, one last thing you haven't got to yet, which I think is important. When Donkin died, his personal possessions in India.
Move. Not much. You may know more about that.
Okay, I'll share it quickly because it's important. The first trip, I was there in the early 70s. Mommy said to me, did you make out a will? I was in my 30s. I hadn't thought about a will. She said, make sure you, especially for things that you have of Baba's, because in those days, the Mandalay were freely giving out Baba's hair, little things that they would give us about it, touch this, touch that. She told me that when Donkin passed, someone from his family, and this makes sense now because it may have been his father or whoever, came and took everything that was Donkin's, that Baba had, things Baba had given Donkin, and they were all kept aside, and the decision was they had to give them because they were his. Donkin had not left the will.
William, he did leave a will, which I'm going to get to.
Right, but maybe not with those things, because
He
mine
had-
was very specific.
There was possessions he died in one of the Bilo and Saraj's bungalows, the first bungalow when you turn in. He lived there in the last 6 months of his life, and he died there. And there is the story that somebody, after his death, got into his premises and took things away. Because he had a couple of lovely cameras, one was a Leica, and they disappeared, And that's the mystery of William's manuscript, that he was finished, apparently, according to Sheila. Between him and Baba, William wrote another book besides Wayfarers, and it was finished. And nobody's ever seen that manuscript. So that disappeared, but if somebody took cameras and they took an old manuscript, that probably it may have gotten thrown away by somebody. Now the other part, he did have a will. William did have a will. It was a bit complicated, but anyway, William's road through an effacement of himself was a long one, almost 36 years. 30 years in India and 6 years before that finishing medical school. And his last meltdown, I call it a meltdown about the absence of the Promised Hospital in Mehrabad, occurred in the 1960s. So that's almost the full 30-year term. Again, William, following through on his threat to leave, went out, said, I'm out of here. I'm so sick. I can't use the words. I'm so sick of this. I'm so sick of your promise that never happened. I think he would have said that to Bob. But William never got, this would have happened at least 6 times in like 30 years. He started walking down the road, probably without his possessions, and Bob said, go to one of the Mandalay, go get him, bring him back directly to me, I don't want to see anybody else. So they'd go in a room, and William would come out maybe 15 minutes later, maybe an hour, maybe, I have no idea how long. Everything was fine. Everything was fine. Because Baba reminded him, I'm here to destroy you. And you forgot for a minute. I'm here to destroy you. These tantrums by William were always followed by a very personal, immediate tete-a-tete with Baba and William. My God, what was said? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. It's maybe like when we lose our faith in Baba temporarily, we go inside ourselves with Baba, and it was probably that same soul-wrenching conversation with Baba, why, my spouse just left me, or my spouse is sleeping with somebody, and you feel like your life is wrecked. Well, William, I don't think William had a sweetheart. I looked really hard to find a sweetheart, either woman or man, but I could never find it. But his sweetheart was Bob, really, and he wanted to be of use. He wanted to. I took journalism because I wanted to write Baba books, but I waited 35 years to write one because I couldn't leave the bogus news and come home and switch gears and write about Baba. I just couldn't do it. I had to go sailing, play tennis, do something physical because it was tough to be in the newspaper business when I wanted to write Bible books, so I had to wait till I retired to do it. So I'll never stop until I stop. Baba for sure was finished promising William a hospital. At that point, probably the last time that William stomped off in the 60s, this like 3 or 4 years before Baba died. William was still stomping down the road, and Baba was still dispatching him down to me and said, bring him directly back to me, everybody else get out. And Baba for sure was finishing promising William the hospital. The gist of what Baba said might have been, my dear Peachy, which was kind of a pet name for William by Baba. My dear Peachy, forget yourself. Forget yourself. And everything that you think you are as Dr. William Donkin, as Bob Mossman, as Betsy Mandela, or Robin Vogel. Forget all, because there's so much attached to our names. There's so much attached. You think of the history, the ancestry. In the end, William did achieve effacement. And I believe he did. Only Baba knows to what degree. We hear stories of William becoming. Mani said he was a must. He was a must. I mean, for William to write The Wayfarers, to come out of medical school, and to eventually, in the mid-40s, to work on The Wayfarers, he said, Baba, this would be a great idea to write the story of the must. And Baba said, yes, you do it. And William said, I'm not a writer, I'm a doctor. He was clinging to being the doctor, right? And but he ended up writing The Wayfarers, but it was a big job. And he probably blew some fuses in writing The Wayfarers, and that's.
What do you mean? I'm sorry, I don't understand. Blew some fuses.
Mentally. Blew some fuses, like, connectors, like mental breakdowns.
Oh, I see, that's, I didn't know.
Yeah, just some instruction.
Yes, there is. Right upstairs, to the right.
Just want to know where to see.
Sure.
The reason that he, diarrhea.
I think, yeah, the reason he stopped, I was lost when I finished his diary. I said, where do I go now? Because up until 45, he did the diary, and then when he got involved with the Wayfarers, I'm sure the diary he didn't keep a diary anymore. So, his last trips to England in 65 and 66 convinced him for sure that a life in the West would no longer work for William. When he returned to Mehrabad from London in 66, William went to Baba and begged. This is like a turning point. This is the first time William did this. He begged to be of service to Baba, saying he would do or pay for anything, whatever Baba wanted. This is new for William, because the doctor thing was gone, I think, at that point. Upheavals continued with William into the late 60s. You all heard he had a major fight with Padre, to the point where William knocked Padre down, physically.
What, just describe that if you would.
Sheila, who was Sheila Fenster, Sheila Kachuri, Baba's daughter, and William were very, very close, very close. And there was some water problem in Mehrabad, and so William said to Sheila she wanted to have a bath, and he said, go to Padre's bathroom when he's asleep and have your little bath. And somehow Padre found out and hit the roof. And then they had the big argument, and William and Padre were always fighting about the doctor, Donkin, and the cleanliness of situations at Mehrabad, and Padre was in charge of Mehrabad. And they were always arguing about sanitary conditions, and Padre would say, this is good enough, and William would say, no, people are going to get sick. So the fight was really the fact that there was a water shortage at the time, and Sheila had snuck a bath in the shared bathroom. So right away, Padre and William were called to Mirzad to face Baba, because he heard about this fight. So they went before Baba, and because of Padre joined Baba, I'm just guessing 1920, 1921, so he had more years with Baba than William. So I don't think Padre would ever be kicked out by Baba. But that's shortly after that, William moved from Mehrabad to Krishna quarters, and Baba faced them off, and he said to Padre, after Padre left the room, he said, who the hell does Padre think he is? The mayor of Mehrabad? So it was both ways. He was upset at both men.
Where are Christian quarters?
Christian
Kushir
quarters.
quarters. You mean
Christian,
Kushir
yeah,
quarters.
sorry, my pronunciation.
Kush.
Yeah.
The trust office.
Yeah.
In Onondaga.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He lived there for a short time, which Sheila was tickled about because she was right there. And then the cinema got too noisy, so right after Baba dropped the body, he went to Vila's bungalow.
But they actually faced off in fisticuffs?
Oh, yeah, they did.
Against Padre?
Padre
So
and William.
bold.
Padre ended up on the ground.
Good Lord.
Whoa.
Padre was very steel.
Near the end of his life, William really wanted to live at Mirzad again. He was there off and on, I'm sure, spent overnights. And this is again, Baba gave him the chance to do so on one condition. William, you can come to Mirzad and stay, but you can't do anything. So here's more effacement, right? You can't fix anything, don't
Mess with it.
that was the only condition, and this is so hard for William, a doctor, graduate, right? He all these other roles, and he was always a busy bee, And do not fix anything. Just be. You're asking William to just be. And within a few days, William was caught with a tool in his hand, trying to do a repair. Baba immediately banished him from Mirzad. That was an order. He was just caught with a tool in his hand. He was going to fix a door, I think. And he went back to Nagar to live. And it broke his heart, but he tried to just be. I think he lasted about 3 days. And, here again, being is what we're left with when the mind goes, right? When the mind goes, we're left with being. So every smidgen of individual ego or self was being effaced from William. And he was almost not a willing subject. In the end, William may have gotten there. Where, Baba, where? It's like if we get rid of the mind, and if we are effaced, where are we? I guess that's when we're just humans, right? We're just beings, and that's where Baba wants us. He wants us to we should all have a little eraser to erase our egos, right? Or our identities with who we are, with Bob Mossman or Marnouche. We have to erase who we are, and just be. I'll just close. I will close now. In September 19th, 1954, at the 3 Incredible Weeks, I have various quotes on the wall of my writing shed, and I keep this one here. I keep it there. Baba said to the group of followers that came for 3 Incredible Weeks, "O lover, beware. God tests you by being cruel, by giving you false hopes, even by cutting you to pieces." So what do we expect if when we feel bad, it's like, it's not that bad. I mean, this is what Baba's, if I hope I get a chance to talk about Charles Burton, because Charles gave a talk in Myrtle Beach in 1964, 8 months before he died. And he knew he was dying for 10 years, Charles Burton. And he talks about, it's like the dark night of the soul. It's like, he said to Elizabeth, Kitty, Laura, and Frank Eaton, there was one other person there. He said he wants us to be dust. And Charles said, you have no idea. He just wants you to be nothing. Baba wants you to be nothing, and just get rid of your minds and just transfer here. It's the hardest thing to do. How many lifetimes? Millions, right? Millions. So, anyway, it's still lots of nuggets of joy. Hey, Baba.
Can you, if you're going to talk about Donkin again, can you tell the story about how you took the car motor all apart?
Oh, yeah.
And how you wanted to drive Baba in his fancy sports car and whatnot.
Yeah.
I love those stories.
Yeah, he was not to belabor it is lunchtime.
Do it again.
William, when he was
Like a tinker, didn't he?
Yeah, when he was in his living quarters, he'd throw all the furniture out the window. And then he'd go, only so he could go out and get it and bring it back in. Because he wouldn't, he had to do something, even he'd take his motorcycle apart, put it all back together again, because he was so frustrated as an unfulfilled graduate from Barracks. I mean, this is a prestigious medical school in the world, right?